It's frozen in a really, really...
Good morning and welcome to this Power Hour event on Budget Forecast. Before we hand over to the presenter, just some housekeeping. The chat function is not live for this event. Instead, if you have a question, please post it in the Q&A channel. Please note, we cannot answer questions that do not directly relate to this session, or ones that are specific to a particular school or trust. If there is a question you would like to see answered by the team, please feel free to upvote it. These sessions are recorded and both recording and slides will be shared after the event. Finally, you will see a QR code on screen. If you can, please scan it now and provide us with some feedback so we can continue to improve these sessions. The QR code will appear again at the end of this session. I will now hand over to my colleague Tom to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Budget Forecast Return kind of Power Hour session. So, give the next slide, please, Sam. So, a bit of an agenda for today. So, what we're going to do is we're going to cover a bit of like, why do we have the BFR? What do we do with the data? What's new for this year and what's changed from previous years? A form demo where we're going to kind of go through and show you the form, how you click through it, and some kind of hints and tips as you go. Then we're going to have a bit of a session on how to complete your BFR and any sort of practical steps. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A session. So as just sort of mentioned, if you've got any kind of questions, post them into the question and answer bit of the chat, and then we'll pick them up at the end. The next slide, please. So bit of kind of BFR housekeeping, if you like. So the BFR is for trusts that were open or active, as we've said here, from the 1st of May. The form went live on Monday, so that's the 13th of July, and the deadline is now the 24th of September. As you're kind of going through, so the BFR is about understanding your forecast for the next 3 years for your trust. So as part of that, that is quite a complex ask. We've got loads of support and kind of guidance for you to help you through that. So we've got a series of Q&A sort of weekly sessions. So if you go to the Eventbrite link, either in the slide or on our gov.uk page, you'll find a series of kind of calls where you can speak to the team about any kind of questions. We'll have some demos about how do you pre-populate your Excel workbook, what is about the form, and we can kind of give you some kind of more tailored advice because the kind of the session is sort of more interactive. And we've also got kind of really good guidance, I think it's really good anyway, really good guidance on gov.uk for the BFR. So in terms of how do you use the workbooks, how do you prepare your form, what happens if you've got an academy that's joining or leaving you, what happens if you've got a new converter from a local authority school. All of that can be seen in terms of a step-by-step of what you need to put where in the form in our gov.uk session. So I'd really encourage you to kind of have a look at our homepage, have a look through the guidance, have a bit of a read, because most instances we've got some scenarios where we can kind of help you through your any kind of queries or questions. So the next slide, please. So what is the BFR and why do we collect it? So the budget forecast return, so it is an unaudited return, unlike the accounts return, which is audited. And what it wants from each trust is what did you do, what are you going to do, and what is your future plans. And that is a sort of in a management accountant style way where we take your kind of financial information, what did you do, what did you spend on staff, what do you think you're going to spend on staff in the next year, and then your future projections. So this is sort of really important data for the department because it helps support and monitor the financial health. We use it for treasury and parliamentary reporting. So there is a couple of sort of treasury things that we have to do, which kind of make sure that we have got all the necessary funding as the Secretary of State requires. And it also forms part of something called the outturn report, or the public expenditure statistical analysis, where the academy sector gets fed into the whole of government in terms of overall outturn spend. So the data that's collected is formed in sort of 4 main chunks. So you've got the revenue data, so that's your kind of your main gag funding, if you like, which covers the running costs. So you've got your kind of your revenue income, you've got your revenue expenditure, and those are broken down into different sections. You've got your capital data, and again, that's about kind of any academies that joined you from the sort of local authority into your trust, what the values were to show the funding, the fund accounting, if there's any transfers from revenue to capital, and any capital expense. So what have you capitalized in the year? Then there'll be another data section which includes any loans, investments, cash at bank, pupil numbers, and then there's the reserve section. So this is what plans you've got for your reserves. And if you're under 0 to 20%, there's a new section for this year, which I'll come on to later. If you've got more than 20%, it'll be more details about how you plan to use those reserves. So the BFR, just to summarize, is a really important return for the DFE. And we really do value the kind of the information in there because we do use it in lots and lots of different ways. The next slide, please, Sam. So what's new this year? What's changed? So first off, the Excel workbooks. This year, we've added a functionality where if you go into your BFR return now and download your report, which the form demo will show you where that is, you can take that data and then you can drop it into the 2026 Excel workbook, and it will pre-populate your BFR. So all of your brought forward balances. So when it comes to preparing your return, you can work it offline. It will work exactly in the same way as the online form. So you can drop the data in, and if you're working through, you could have other spreadsheets that you want to link to your BFR spreadsheet. So when it comes to doing the overall numbers, you've got the starting basis of what is in the return already, what's been pre-populated from last year's data. So I think that's a really useful kind of new addition that we've made this year. And again, in the workbook, so whether it's the traditional one, which is the really long one, or the multi-page one, which mirrors every single page of the form, the guidance in there will show you where you need to paste it in and the exact format, and it will just work through and fill your workbook for you. And we've added 2 new finance questions. So these are just tick boxes where we ask around use of top slicing. So that's if your trust provides central services, and do you do it or not? And then gag pools, do you gag pool or not? And I suppose these are straightforward questions that don't require any kind of like in-depth calculations or anything that will kind of require additional work. It is literally a yes, no. In terms of new lines this year, so we've changed line 220 because that did used to include investment income. So now what we've done is we've created a new one, which is line 213, which includes investment income. Previously, that was included in line 220, but what we've done this year is because we're interested in the interest generated from your investments. So to make it easier, what we've done is we've pre-populated this from your previous year's accounts return, which is detailed in the sort of the Excel workbook of the exact line, but we've taken your accounts return investment income line and pre-populated your BFR with it. So you don't need to go and find that number out. But what it does mean for this year is you need to split that line out from 220 into 213. So 220 basically is all other income except investment income. And then the final change on this slide is we've updated how we calculate 410 and 670. So these are the brought forward numbers for your return. So what that means is that's the equivalent of the free reserves that your trusts would have held from previous years and how you brought them forwards. So what we've done on that is for the vast majority of trusts, you will notice no difference in how we would have done it previously to this year. But what we're going to now do is use the net movement in fund table from your accounts return to pre-populate the BFR. So that means that we'll take an audited free reserves position for your revenue, which is 410, and for your capital, which is 670, and put that into your BFR. So that is then forms a formation of your forecasts from a known and audited position for the equivalent cash and reserves usage. The Excel workbook and our online form guide give exact breakdowns of how we've calculated this through. We've tested it, and this is how the department views the state of reserves for the sector. And that's what we're going to now do for the BFR. We're going to put this number in, and then that will form the basis of your future forecasts. The next slide, please, Sam. And then the next sort of lump of change is all around reserves. So for trusts with 20% or more, so that is calculated based on your total revenue income and your total kind of carry forward revenue position. So the changes, there's some updated questions. There's a tick box, one of where you are in your kind of reserve cycle, as in, are you wanting to generate more? Are you at a steady state? Are you about to start using them? We're going to ask for how much reserves you hold per category. So if you have got, if you're holding a load of reserves for a capital project, it'll ask you how much are you holding in total of the reserves that you've got, and what was your planned spend in 26-27, so your next academic year. And then what we're going to now do is, because previously we had some users who had who didn't round to rounded thousands, we are now to mitigate that sort of issue. It's now going to reconcile back to the reserves that you've got. So what that means is, if for argument's sake you have got £1 million of reserves, in this section it will ask you to separate the £1 million of how you plan to use it for the categories, and it will have to reconcile back, and if it doesn't, there'll be a validation to explain why it doesn't reconcile. So that's one of the important changes. It's not asking any new questions as such. It means the allocation and how you choose to allocate it is then validated back to the number that we think that is based on the outcome for the form. The new section that we've added this year for all trusts who have reserves of essentially above 0% and up to 20% is to ask each trust to tell us, again, where are they in their circumstances? So are you building? Are you steady state? Are you about to start using it? And we'll ask trust how you're going to kind of prioritize this spend, and what and when you're going to use it for. So for each year, we're going to ask you to sort of literally just tick from a list the 3 most priority areas that you're going to spend on. So if you've, say, for example, got a building project that's your #1 priority and it's going to take 5 years, you would literally tick building project for 26-27, building project for 27-28, and building project for 28-29 onwards. And that is what we're after. We want to understand what you're prioritizing and when you are going to use the reserves as part of that. And again, in the guidance on our gov.uk pages, in the workbooks and in our form guide, there's really detailed explanations of this, including some scenarios, so you can work through, you can see some examples, and you can kind of apply that to your own trust. So again, for the 0 to 20%, it is literally tick boxes. For 20% and above, it is as it was before, where we will expect a narrative explanation of why are you holding these reserves, what are your plans for it, and what do you think the kind of the blockers are preventing you from using it. All of this is in the guidance, so have a read, have a look at the workbook, and again, because of the way we've calculated the brought forward numbers, it will then reconcile back to an audited outturn number that was sort of signed off by your auditors and your trustees. So it's all starting from that same kind of genus working forward. So the in theory, the forecast number should be a lot more kind of robust. The next slide, please, Sam. Excellent. So I think we've got a form demo now. So I will go off camera whilst the demo starts.
Welcome to this BFR form demo. The BFR collects forecast financial data from Academy Trusts on an annual basis for the prior year, current year and forecast year. Today, we'll look through the basics of the BFR form, highlighting any new areas for this year. Once you've successfully logged into the BFR form, you'll be presented with this dashboard. You can see the dashboard is split into three main sections: Overview, Prepare BFR form and Submit BFR form. To the far right of the screen, you'll see information on how you can raise an inquiry via our customer help portal. You'll also find a link on how to access the BFR Gov UK page, where you can see the main BFR guidance, rebrokerage guidance, and details on how to join our weekly Q&A calls via our Eventbrite link. Below this, you can see two options: Download Return Overview and Download Historic Return Overview. The Download Return Overview enables you to download your current BFR 2026 return, and the Download Historic Return Overview enables you to download your BFR 2025 data. Both of these reports can be downloaded into either PDF or Excel. Upon logging into the form, each of these sections will display as not started. As this is used for demonstration purposes, the statuses are slightly different and display as completed and in progress. The introduction section includes fields where the Trust must enter contact details and confirm the academies within the Trust as at the 1st of May 2026. Then confirm whether this information is correct. You can enter any external preparer details here. And the Finance Questions section has 6 questions. These questions centre around provisions, loans, investments, overdraft, top slicing and any centrally held general annual grant. Questions 5 and question 6 are new to the BFR this year. Question 5 asks for a yes or no answer, and question 6 asks for trusts to select one of the following options. If option 4 is selected, you'll then need to detail the percentage of GAG that is pulled. Let's go into section number 2, Prepare BFR form. Within the pupil numbers section, you can see the information that is required. Throughout the form, we detail the guidance link here, and the help text is displayed under each of the BFR line numbers. Enter figures into the form by typing into the allocated boxes. Once you've typed your figures into the allocated boxes, you can then click Mark as Complete and select Next. This will take you onto the next part of the form. The second subsection is Revenue. In here you can see this is broken down into smaller categories. You'll need to detail information around the revenue the Trust has received, revenue expenditure, and any transfers of revenue. This will then flow into the Revenue Totals section. As you can see, the form collects data across 3 years: 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27. The data collected here is displayed in this way to show the academic year and the DFE financial year end. The grey column is calculated, and you do not need to enter any data into this. There's a calculated column in the first section, second section, and third section. Enter your data into the September to March columns and the total columns for each of the years. The calculated column will then work out the difference between the two figures. If you completed a BFR return last year, where applicable, your data for September 24 to March 25 will be pre-populated with your BFR 2025 figures. If you have automated this year, your data for column 1, 24-25, and column 3, total 24-25, will be populated from your FMS data where applicable. The BFR line numbers to the left of the screen detail the line name and what to include. Again, there is help text below each of the line numbers detailing what should be included. You will also see a drop-down for any COA codes or any mapping, where applicable, for each BFR line. This year, within the Other Revenue section, you'll see line 213 Investment Income, which is a new line. Include any investment income received by the Trust in here. The figures from 24-25 have been pre-populated with the figures from your 24-25 accounts return. Previously, investment income was included in line 220. If you recorded any investment income in your 24-25 figures, please remove this and instead include in line 213. The help text on line 220 will display as a reminder of this. Once you have completed each section, mark as complete and answer any validations triggered. Then select Next. You can then work through each category within the revenue section, detailing your trust's figures as you move through each of these sections. This year, for line 410, we have pre-populated the balance brought forward on the 1st of September 2024 with the restricted fund and unrestricted fund in the analysis of net assets between funds table from the 23-24 accounts return. This does not include capital funds or pension scheme liabilities. Line 410 is not editable. You can adjust your in-year figures within the revenue, income and expenditure section of the form. You can find out more details on the exact AR field references used in our BFR guidance page in the revenue section. This year we have a new section within the form which collects details on Academy Trust's plans for reserves. If your trust is holding reserves between 0 and 20% of your total revenue income, you will need to answer a series of tick box questions. You will only trigger this section of the form if your revenue reserve ratio is between 0 and 20%. The first two figures here displayed detail the amount carried forward from line 430 at the 31st of August 2026. And the revenue reserves as a percentage of your total revenue income. Following this, you'll see a series of questions around reserves policy, reserves planning cycle, and areas of spend for reserves that are held above contingency. Once these questions have been answered, click Mark as complete and then select Next to move on to the next section. The Reserve Balance Details section. The Revenue Balance Details section will be triggered if your trust is holding reserves of over 20% of your total revenue income. We have made some minor changes to this page for the BFR 2026. For the Reserve Balance Details section, you'll see the revenue reserve amount from line 430 at the 31st of August 2026 displayed on here, and also the percentage ratio that triggered this page. The next question asks around reserves held for contingency and how the trusts have calculated the level of reserves you need to hold for this contingency. The next question asks for details around where any remaining reserves are due to be spent and the context behind this, and the planned spend for the 26-27 academic year. Select any of the options as appropriate. Once you've entered all of your details into this screen and allocated the spend, you'll then see a new section here, the balance carried forward from line 430 as at the 31st of August 26 minus any allocated spend in the categories above, including contingencies. Here we ask for any unallocated reserves to be described. This box serves as a check to ensure that the numbers entered above have been rounded in thousands, and also if there are any unallocated reserves, please enter the details in the comments section. Once this has been completed, you can then mark as complete and go into the next section. The next section is capital. The capital section is set out in a similar way to the revenue section, collecting details around capital income and expenditure as per these categories. This year, we've repopulated line 670, balance brought forward from previous period for the 1st of September 2024 with the restricted fixed asset fund, excluding fixed assets, both tangible and intangible, and pension scheme liabilities in the net assets between funds table from the 2023-24 accounts return. Line 670 is not editable. You can adjust your in-year figures within the capital income and expenditure section of the form. You can find more details on the exact AR field references used in our BFR guidance page in the capital section. Once the capital section has been completed, you can then move on to the other items section. Within the other items section, we collect details around cash, impairment, investments, loans, provisions and depreciation. The investments, loans and provisions sections will open or display grayed out dependent on whether you selected yes or no to having any of these items in the finance questions section of the form. Trust revenue reserves. The Trust Revenue Reserve section details information around centrally held reserves and is where you can disclose any balances held at each academy if this is applicable to your trust. If all reserves are held centrally, select Yes and detail reserves held. If balances are held centrally and at academy level, select No, and you can detail the individual academy balances within these lines here. 3-year forecast. The 3-year forecast section is a summarised view of revenue, capital and other items, reserves for the 26-27 year up to the 28-29 year. The figures from the previous section of the form will populate this first column here. By opening the help text, you can see where each forecast line maps to. Once you've completed the 3-year forecast section, the final section of the form will then open. Summary Declaration. The summary declaration gives a summary of revenue totals, capital totals, reserves, and the 3-year forecast summary. You can download this into Excel or PDF, and then tick here to confirm whether you agree with this statement. You can then mark as complete and proceed to the next section. You will then be able to fill in the Prepare a Declaration part of the form, Approve a Declaration part of the form, and then submit your BFR return to the DFE. Dependent on the role you have, this section here will be greyed out. If you're an approver, this will be greyed out. Once you've filled in these sections, you can then submit this. You will receive an email from the DFE to confirm we have received your submission. Thank you for watching this demo. For more information on how to complete your BFR return, please visit our GovUK BFR guidance page. Welcome to this BFR.
Excellent. The next slide, please. So we're going to go through some kind of like practical kind of like how do we get our BFR signed off in the most sort of easiest way. So the first bit is we're going to talk about is DFE sign-in. So basically, if you had a role from last year and you were an approver or a preparer, you don't need to do anything, and your account will still be set up, and you just log in. You may have to refresh your password if you've not been into DFE sign-in for a while. That's all automated, and it'll work through that. But in terms of checks and things you should think about is, have you had any new leavers, new starters or joiners, or leavers from your trust? So if you've had someone who used to prepare the form and you've had someone replace them, have you set them up? Have they got a user role? So when you log in to DFE sign in, you'll be able to see who has what role, and you need to make sure that you've got all the roles covered, and the people that you think should be doing a role have got the role. A quick reminder, the BFR is at trust level. So if people are getting set up, make sure it's not at the academy or school, it's at trust. Because otherwise the form won't let you into the form, and you'll have sort of access issues, because again, the BFR is at trust level, not individual academies. So you need to make sure your account is also set up at that level as well. Again, a quick reminder that each trust must have at least a BFR approver as a role in your organization. It's fine if there's only one person and they are the approver, that is fine. They can fill out, prepare, and submit the form all on their kind of own, but you need to make sure that they've got at least an approver role as part of that. Some trusts, they have some external preparers. So that's a bit like in the accounts return where you have an external auditor preparer. And again, they need to be set up just as they are with that. So they need to be set up as part of the DFE ADC external group, which means that as the form demo showed, what you need to do is once they're set up on that, we'll then check and approve their role, because that's something that the DFE do. You just need to enter their email address that they've used to register. And then once you've done that, they can then get access to your BFR form and do all the preparer roles. You will still need a BFR approver to submit the role, but they can then do that kind of the admin filling in the form for you. Next slide, please. So guidance, support, and help. So the BFR gov.uk page, you'll find links to the, first of all, how to get into the form, all of the Excel workbooks. We've got our main guidance. So what do you need to do? You've got a specific question about, I don't know, endowments, or what is our definition of investment income? All of that thing, so you can literally just go onto there, and if you just do Control F, it'll bring up a little search bar, or you can just read through and scan through it, and we've got hyperlinks throughout the document to try and find something. We've got the links to the kind of semi-regular Eventbrite sessions where we are going to have sort of sector dial-ins. So think of it as a bit of a mini presentation. And also, I've got a particular query. I want to talk to someone about XYZ about the BFR, and you'll be able to talk to the team about that. We also have got links to the teacher pay announcement. So we will then signpost you to the details on the gov.uk about exactly what has been announced and the calculator, as well as the teacher's pension employment contribution rate grant reduction that was announced, I think, about a week ago for 26-27 onwards. And also links to the maximising value for pupil stuff as well. So if you wanted to find out, how do I kind of get better energy deals? How do I get a kind of a school resource management stuff? All of that stuff is included in the BFR guidance and signposts you to kind of other sections as well. If you've got any other questions, you've always got the DFE customer help portal. So that is where I am stuck. I have got a thing that I'm not sure about. I've had a look at the guidance. I'm not sure. Please just put in a question and we'll be able to answer it. And then there's also the school resource management page as well. So you've got details around kind of financial governance, planning, forecasting, procurement, all sorts of stuff around that. So again, I can't encourage you enough. Go to our webpage, have a look at the form guide, scroll through, and there is links in there to signpost you to stuff that is kind of relevant and helpful. If you do want to know more about something, the BFR guide will have links in it for you. The next slide, please. So trustees engagement. This is kind of vital for your BFR. So the advice that we will give is we will not advise each trust on how you need to deal with your each individual trustees, because that is a trust decision, right? But in terms of, if you're unsure of what to do, think of some options. Think of either the kind of optimistic, neutral, pessimistic options. You know your trustees best. Have a think about what what would it help to make the trustees understand either the kind of the choices or options that they have got in terms of agreeing to the budgets. There was a previous budget assumptions power hour session, I think last week. As part of that, wherever we put this, I think it'll be on YouTube as well. You'll be able to watch that, and that's run by an independent person from DfE about kind of budget settings. I think it was one of the school's resource management advisor who did that. Essentially, each trust will be expected to kind of follow the handbook. I'll just point out that the ATH requirement of 2.1.5, it did say end of August. Ignore that. It is going to be the 24th of September. So don't worry about kind of that as a requirement. That date essentially is the new deadline. Trusts, you should have meetings to agree budgets with trustees. However, you know, you need to work around what your financial governance arrangements are. So I'm aware that some trusts may have already had budget meetings. And again, you need to consider how material the teacher pay, sorry, I can get teeth in, the employer's teacher's pension rate contribution reduction, is that going to be material for your trust or not? Do you think you need to revise the budget, right? And then if you do think that, how are you going to do that? Is it through correspondence? What does your own financial governance set out? You know, have a think about what you want to do, and ultimately it's your decision, it's your trustees' decision if they want to kind of revise and update budgets. Go for the next slide, please. So the Excel workbooks. So there's two versions. The traditional, which is essentially a long kind of work down where you've got revenue income, revenue expenditure, sort of reserve sections. Then you've got the capital, income and expenditure. Then you've got some kind of other bits, and then the 3-year section at the bottom. That's in one long spreadsheet. Or you've got the multi-page one, which replicates each page of the online form. So if you want to work your way through in a sort of methodical way, where you can see exactly where the pages all split up, use the multi-page. Again, both forms ask exactly this, both workbooks, sorry, ask exactly the same questions as the online form. There may be one or two presentational differences because Excel and online form don't always necessarily correlate in that sense, but all the questions, all the validations, all the numeric and all the logic is exactly the same. And just as a quick reminder, you can pre-populate your BFR workbook with your BFR report from this year's form. So if you go in, open it up, drop the numbers in, then that's a really good basis for starting your kind of your prep for it. And just a reminder that we don't accept Excel workbooks as a submission. It's got to be done via the form. The next slide, please. So some frequently asked questions. We thought we'd add in what was our most frequently asked questions from BFR 25. Again, it really falls into sort of 4 main categories. Pupil numbers. So the answer is use pre and post 16 pupils as at the end of the October census of the year of input. So if you're filling it in for the 25-26 academic year, use October 25 as the basis of your pupils. Revenue reserves, line 800. So we get asked each year about this. SATs, so single academy trusts, as you do not have multiples, you will not see the line 800s. MATs, you will see the line 800s if you do not pool the reserves. If you choose to pool it, you don't have the option to break it down. If you say that you don't pool it, you'll need to put a value in for each and every academy that's in your trust. DfE sign-in, common problems. So when I said earlier about making sure that you're registered against the trust and not the academy, if you try and do that, it won't let you into the BFR. You need to make sure that you're set up at the trust, not an academy. And the other one is around there's no approvers in your organization. So someone's left, they've not been replaced, or they've been replaced but not set up in the system. You need to make sure that you've got an approver set. So again, just spending that 5 minutes just to check everyone who you're expecting to do something on the form with are they set up? And again, the deadline extension. Usually it's towards the end of August each year. This year, it's the 24th of September. The next slide, please. So feedback. We love feedback. If there's something you like, tell us. If there's something you don't like, give us some constructive feedback. But once you've done your BFR, there'll be a kind of, as part of as the form demo said earlier, there'll be part of an email confirming, yes, we've got your return, thank you very much. And again, there's an option to provide us some feedback. So just use that to tell us, you know, in a constructive way, what could we do better? What could make it easier? What about X, Y, Z? We'd love to hear your feedback, because once we've got the feedback, we can use it. We can at least have got the evidence to make changes for it. So if we open up now to the Q&A bit of the session. So there's a few questions I've kind of got the team to kind of pull out the queue for us, and I'm going to kind of verbally answer that, and then we'll pop the answer in the chat. So the first one is, why was BFR late going out this year? That's a very good question. So essentially, we had some last-minute requirements that we had to add in. And we need to make sure it was fully tested and fully worked. So, and again, this is something that we didn't want to push a form out that was not been fully tested too soon. So that is why we took the time to make sure it actually worked as we wanted it to. And essentially that's that. Why have you only extended the deadline so far? So BFR was always planned to open mid-June. So what we've done is we've pushed out the deadline a month. So we were roughly a month late going out. We've opened the deadline a month further, so roughly to the end of September, well, the 24th of September. So trusts have still got time to work through all of their forecasts, work through all of their options and the engagement with trustees. They've still got the same amount of time, it's just slightly later. And then the next question is around teachers' pay and funding cuts. Have come out late after the budget's been set. What do we do? So again, trusts have you got up until the 24th of September to submit your budget to us. As part of your return, there's a section where I'll ask you what pay award rates have you used for teachers and support staff. So that's the staff who are covered by the teacher's pay, staff covered by the NJC. So you can provide a kind of an assumption of what pay award rate have you used and any assumptions as part of that. So, but in the reality is, right, each trust, you've got to consider your budgets, what the impact of the pension cut announcement is. And if you think it's material after you've already set it, and you've checked with the trustees whether that's just through some correspondence or just a quick phone call with them, you need to review your internal governance policies around how you can kind of work within the spirit of the ATH and your internal kind of like governance, so you're not kind of doing something in an ultra vires way, how you want to engage with trustees. If you think it's material, if your trustees think it's material, ultimately it's the trust and the trustees' choice around what you do on this. You've got until the 24th of September to really think about that. So again, we can't say definitely do this, definitely don't do this. Trusts, you need to think about, what does this mean? Is this a material change for us? What do your trustees think? And then ultimately, as responsible bodies, that's something you'll need to kind of work through together. So the next question we've had is, why have we changed the 410 and 670 pre-population? So we've updated this based on usable reserves. So if you Google the DfE reserves guidance, so as part of that and as part of the charity SORP, the definition of free reserves is reserves that could be used for the purposes intended. The changes to 410 and 670 link back to the accounts return, which was audited. It's been signed off by your chair of trustees and your accounting officer. We've used that as the basis of for this year, it'll be your 23-24 brought forward into the form. So that is why we've changed that and formalized that in a way so it's really clear. This is what we think that you have got as reserves, so that from going forwards, it's a really solid basis of how you've built your forecast on top of it. The next question is the new reserves up to 20%. What is it and why have you added it? So it's basically the department wants to understand what plans are roughly in place in a really low impact way of, you know, the majority of trusts are within 0 to 20% kind of carry forward. So what we want to do is understand what statement best represents your trust, i.e. we're at a level, we're happy with the levels of reserves and we've got no plans to use it. Okay, that's fine. We want to build up reserves and we're not going to do anything because we've got this big project coming up in the future, or we're well below where we want to be, and actually our plan is to generate reserves to build a sort of kind of to build up either to our minimum contingency level or, you know, saving for a larger project. So there's 5 or 6 questions setting out what best sort of characterizes your trust's reserves position. And then the next bit is around your spending plans. So you've got a variety of sort of choices from kind of everything from pupil provision, staff provision, IT, and sort of new buildings and estates. What we'd like you to do for that is over the next 3 years, right, for each year, pick your top 3 spending plans, right? And if you've got one that lasts multiple years, for example, you've got a big building project, that's unlikely to be done in just a year. So it's likely to span multiple. And what would that like you to do for that is, so for each year, pick what is your top 3 spending plans. You know, if you've only got 1, that's fine. If you've got 5, pick the top 5. And again, just look at it in a year by year basis. This is just literally kind of a tick box in terms of not asking you kind of like reams and reams of data. It's literally what indication and what are you using your reserves for? So that's a sort of the interest for it, because ultimately, you know, the department is interested in how we are using reserves, what the plans are, and this is the sort of the first kind of data gathering in a more kind of constructive way for the whole sector rather than just the ones with more than 20%. So if I have a look at the chat, are there any? So just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to have a look at the list. So, sorry, just bear with me 1 second. Get the right page open. So I can see there's a number of, so on the right hand side, you can see in the published chat, there's a series of questions that have been kind of asked and we've kind of responded as a team. So unless, I don't think there are any new questions that haven't already been covered in the 5 that I've just gone through, or the questions that are already published here. So I think at that point, should we draw this to a close? And if I can hand back to Susan to wrap up.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, thank you all, and thank you, Tom, for the presentation. Thank you all for attending this event this morning. You'll see there the QR code again. Again, just a plea for any feedback so we can continue to improve these sessions, or you can send us a question or some feedback at maximising.value@education.gov.uk. And just to reiterate, both the recording and the slides will be available after the event. Thank you once again for attending, and we hope you have a good week, everybody. Thank you.